Joey, we talk a lot about betting on yourself. And I think this interview today with Alex Pardo from Flip Empire and the Ascend mastermind really gives a lot more clarity as to how someone can bet on themselves, go through some trials along the way, but also really receive some amazing success and clarity to life's fulfillment. And I think to you, man, I think about how you bet on yourself going back to 2014 and leaving a job where you were earning over $300,000 to come work with me.
That was a huge, huge step of faith. So I totally resonated with Alex and his story to even run it up on his credit card, his lifestyle, and to say, man, I've got to invest in myself. We'd say bet on yourself, but I also think it's investing in yourself.
Well, he definitely had a little bit of a Forrest Gump moment where he went out on a run for a while. And, I think we all got to find ourselves. And right after college, I mean, hey, we all do what may be considered dumb things, but he left a job, a corporate job working at GE, which I don't know if you know this, like the first book I read outside of college, which technically is probably the first book I read ever.
Let's be honest.
Was a business book based on Jack Welch's life, the CEO of GE from 1981 to 2001. So I thought it was interesting when he said he had the ambition to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and his first job out of college was working at GE. And then whenever he did go on his own, a little crazy, some might imagine, he was able in just 3 months and in one paycheck to bring in almost the same amount that he was making at his corporate job and having to work 75 hours a week to get there.
Yeah, I think if you are stuck in your job right now, you need to be listening. This is inspiring to help you take the leap that you need to get the network around you that you need, to get the investment in yourself that you need, to take the steps. And now then to transition the end of the story, we're not going to give it away. But Alex, seeing that there's so much more he can bring to this world because of the steps he took early on.
No doubt. And by the way, as we wrap it up, this really challenged me as a dad with a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. I obviously have some younger ones, but with those two, and I talked to my 15-year-old about this yesterday as we were driving home. I said, I really want to challenge you to learn how to do some of these skills and implement these skills that I'm learning from these interviews, because if you want to go out and you want to be an architect or you want to be a nurse, man, good on you. I'm all for it. But by 18 years old, you can be bringing in an income from these sort of avenues that you may work 5 to 10 hours a week in that equal what a nurse or an architect makes every single year before you ever leave the house to go to college. And I'm inspired to teach them to learn these skill sets so if they want to, they can apply them, but they will have at least that opportunity and they have that in their back pocket. Last thing I will say as we jump in this interview with Alex Pardo, go to reidebate.com. This is where they take really interesting ideas and they debate them, so that I think he calls them the real estate debate heavyweight section.
Yeah.
And there's some really cool things. Is long-term rental better than short-term rental? Is mobile home parks better than storage facilities? So these are really cool things. I want to plug that. Also go listen to him on his podcast, Flip Empire. But I think you're in for a treat with this episode. Let's jump in with Alex Pardo.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Are you looking for ways to implement ideas, get exposure to new ones, and be surrounded by people on the same journey as you? Joey, where can they go to do that?
Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/community. You can join for free today. Welcome into the show. We have a treat for you. Alex Pardo is joining us today. Man, so glad to have you.
Hey guys, Joey, Russ, it's my pleasure and honor. It was amazing getting to know you guys in Birmingham, and again, I'm excited to be on your show.
Man, Alex, as entrepreneurs, we all have forks in the road that come along, and we're going to choose the path, and sometimes the path we choose at that time is the perfect path, but later on we realize, man, I should have went the other way. In your life, you were sharing with us before we press record that, man, you've had a lot of those forks that you've come to. And I want to kind of take you to a time where you were doing, 4, 5, 6 wholesale deals a month. And for those of you guys who don't know a whole lot about wholesaling, that's a business where it's very transaction oriented. It's really fast paced, but it seems like it can also be overwhelming. And you mentioned to us that having that successful business, it wasn't fulfilling you internally. Can you kind of take us through that moment and what was going on and what led up to that point?
Yeah, great question, and it takes me back. It's actually pretty fresh and recent, and so I can, I'm happy to kind of unpack that for people, and hopefully, people listening and watching this, it resonates with them because I had a successful business from the outside. I loved my team and the people that, I consider them family. So everything from the outside looked good. We had our challenges in business. We've had some ups and downs, but we were profitable. We were doing well. It's a business that I know very, very well. I've been doing it since 2005. And yet for a good year and a half, I felt like something was missing within the business. And ultimately what was missing was that I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. I asked myself, I'm a big believer in, you ask yourself the right questions and your brain will find the right answers. And I asked myself at one point late last year, I said, if I'm still running and operating this business 12 months from now, what would be my gut reaction? How would I feel? And the answer was I wouldn't be happy. I would still feel unfulfilled. And that's when I knew, like, I have to start doing something. I have to start to unwind this beast of a business that I had created. The vision I had for my business was for it to support my lifestyle and for it to be a high margin, high profit business with low overhead. And since 2018, I was continuing to scale, and it got to the point last year where my overhead ballooned to anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a month.
Wow.
Now I realize that number is relative, right? So for some people, that's a lot. For most people, it's probably a lot. For some people, that's nothing. For me, it became stressful when we had to close 2.5 deals a month just to basically break even. Right. And we operate in a challenging market here in South Florida. And yet I would genuinely get more joy and fulfillment when someone would send me a message on Facebook or would send me an email. Hey, Alex, this particular Flip Empire podcast really resonated with me. It helped me XYZ. That would juice me up more than closing our next $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 deal. And so I knew something was off. And in February 2019, I was in it's called Master Mission. My partner, Steve Kavanaugh, puts this on where we go to Guatemala and we spent the first half of the day masterminding and the second half of the day out in the mission field, working with kids and families that are, basically live in poverty. And I didn't know what to talk about when it was my turn, because again, from the outside looking in, everything was fine. We were making money. I don't work crazy hours. I spent a lot of time with my 2 girls and my wife. And I shared with them, I said, guys, I feel like God has been tapping me on the shoulder for a while. I just don't know what he wants me to do. Honestly, I just kind of felt lost. And I shared with them, I said, despite the fact that I have this podcast and I'm helping people and I run and operate this business and we have 8, 9 team members, I feel like something is missing. And so that was kind of the catalyst. Those people that day really poured into me and they kind of flipped the mirror back on myself. And, fast forward 4 or 5 months, I was sitting in another mastermind with Steve, and he shared how, he was having some challenges with his coaching business and he wanted to kind of evolve. He was doing deal coaching in Maryland at the time, and he wanted to work with entrepreneurs that are at a certain place in their life and business. And he wanted it to be more life and business based, not necessarily the X's and O's of real estate. And it really resonated with me. So on the break, I approached him and I said, look, man, I don't know if there are any synergies here, if this is going to go anywhere, but I feel like you and I are kind of walking down the same path and we didn't even realize it. And so 3 to 4 weeks later, we decided to launch our mastermind and coaching community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but Ascend was what God had been calling me to do.
Well, I want to talk about that, but if it's okay, I'm going to press pause and ascend. And I want to descend, if you will.
Okay. I like that.
Because I mentioned that there was multiple forks in the road, and that was the one that was one of the most recent ones.
Yes.
But reading your bio and listening to your story, I know that this story started back in like 05, because you were like gung-ho, you're going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. You're going down that road, and 75 hours in, you're like, I don't know if I like this. Next thing you know, you're backpacking across Europe and Africa, it seemed like, and you came up with a whole new vision. Take us back to that point, because I think that leads us to the fork that you're at right now.
Yeah, no, great question, Russ. So I've always been pretty decent at reverse engineering the process, right? So I always start with the end outcome in mind. Like, what's my magic wand scenario? What do I want, whether it's life or business or in a relationship, health? And then I kind of work my way backwards to figure out what I need. Well, when I was working in GE, I looked at my boss and her boss all the way up the ladder to the CEO. And it was very clear, I don't want that kind of life. Like, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. So I had made a commitment to GE. It was a 2-year financial management program. I finished that off, told my boss, hey, appreciate it, but this isn't for me. And I was in an internet cafe in Ibiza. I had been backpacking for, like you said, 3.5 months at this point. I had financed the entire trip with my credit card. I was, by the way, for context sake, 25 years old, single guy. And I was moving back to Miami to live with my parents, which is not a good look. That was a big for me. Like, I got to figure out what I want to do with my life. And a friend of mine sends me an email and he's like, hey, I'm going to this marketing for deals boot camp in Atlanta next month. It's $997. Do you want to go? That was a fork in the road moment for me. I could either put the $997 on my card and go another $1,000 in debt, or I could not do that. I was going to be getting back to Miami in a week or two, and I was going to probably start either looking for a job or just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. Well, I put the $997 on my credit card. I attended this boot camp. I learned how to market for deals. This was all new to me. I got home and I remember getting the manual from the event, and I plucked out a pre-foreclosure letter. I didn't have a lot of money, so I took that letter, I ripped it out, and I made photocopies. Guys, it was so ghetto that the paper, you could see the 3 black holes from the photocopy. That's how ghetto it was. And I started hand addressing envelopes and stuffing and stamping envelopes to go out to pre-foreclosures. Fast forward 2 to 3 months later, ended up closing my first deal and made $44,000, which was $4,000 shy of my salary at GE.
Oh, wow.
And that was it.
But wait a minute. So from the time you sent the letter to the time you closed the deal 2 to 3 months later, what were you doing with your time? Were you like, okay, well, I hope this works. This is all I got. Or were you working part-time?
I was all in. I didn't have a job. Wow. I had burned the ships, as they say. Like, I literally went all in. And that, I think that has served me very well. I've always been like a ready, fire, aim. Most times in my life, that has served me very well. There's been a few times where I kind of wish I had a mulligan and take that back. But when I commit to something, I'm all in. Like, my mentality is, I'm going to make this work. The question is just, how long is it going to take?
Well, so talk about that. I mean, obviously your credit card in debt, right? You got 3 months on the card and then another 1,000, and then you're probably putting more on the card in order to do all the mailers. Hey, what is that feeling? And I gotta imagine, are you living at your parents' house, or is your buddy letting you stay at his place?
No, I'm living at my parents' house. And again,
and they're like
25 years.
Yeah, they're like, seriously, Alex, what are you doing here? And that's it. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get a $44,000 check. That obviously that's in 2005, 2006.
2000. So I went to the seminar October 2005. We closed the deal January 2006.
So 2006. So all of a sudden you're like, bingo, I figured it out. I know what I want to do. I can make more money in so much less time than I ever thought possible. And you start building it, starts growing. It goes from one deal to making 5 or 6 deals. And 13 years down the road, you're like, wait a second, this isn't what I want to do. Because the money didn't fulfill you, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's money's important, but it's a tool. It's ultimately, we were talking about this yesterday. It's a tool to do the types of things I want to do with the people I love, when I want to do them, how I want to do them for as long, right? It's a tool to achieve financial freedom. It's not the end all be all. Like, I don't sacrifice what's most important to me, time with my wife, with my girls, in the pursuit of money, but in 2017, I think I got influenced, if I'm being very transparent, I think I got influenced by me seeing people on social media scale their business, and it was all about checks and deals and volume. And I was like, I can do that. And so I set out on this path to just do more and more and more. But with every time I did more, I was getting less fulfilled. It's funny how that works. Just because, a friend of mine told me something years ago that really resonated with me. About a year and a half ago, she said, scale to get better, don't scale to get bigger, and better is better. And yet society and social media and your friends might tell you, no, more, get bigger and bigger, try to make as much money as possible. But yet in the meantime, I see failed relationships. I see people's health out of whack. I see people just not happy despite the fact that they're making more money. So money doesn't equal happiness, at least not in my eyes. It's important, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't equal happiness.
Well, just a clarity point for me. Was your wholesale business taking you further away from the lifestyle you wanted, or was it continue to support it?
It was supporting it. I still wasn't working crazy hours within the wholesale business. I just felt like I could do so much more. I wanted to impact more people. I could have been perfectly fine continuing to run the operation, but honestly, it just got a little boring. It's a very transactional business, and it just felt like we were chasing deal after deal after deal. And I had been doing it for 15 years and doing it well, but it just got kind of boring. And as cliche as it sounds, guys, I know you'd believe this. We only get one crack at life. And I believe God has given us all a unique ability. He's given us talents, and it's our job to multiply those talents and use it to help people. And I didn't feel like I was doing that.
Well, I think too, I mean, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like, you and I seem to be cut from the same cloth, that we do things for a certain period of time and we're like, okay, done. Now what's next? Right? I mean,
if there's not a level of fulfillment, yes, 100%.
Yeah. So then comes the podcast. You start a show called Flip Empire. You've been doing that for 4 years. You mentioned that you were more excited by the emails and the messages that you were receiving from people who had been listening to the show than the next big check you were getting. Talk about how that influences your life and how that's been influential in the lives of the people that you've been able to connect with.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the question. Honestly, it's a big driver. It's a platform where I get to, hop behind a microphone, share my message, share my thoughts. By the way, I think one of the things that really connects people to the show is that I'm very, very vulnerable. In other words, I share as many losses, and there's significantly more losses than there are wins. And I share that. I share with people my struggles, my challenges, because we're all human, and I feel like that resonates with people because I'm just a regular dude, and I'm just somebody who kind of fails forward. I take action, but, rewinding, I should say, back in 2015, 16, beginning of 16, I was fortunate in that I had people reaching out to me wanting to learn what I was doing, how I was doing it. And I would end these conversations and I would say to myself, I wish that was recorded because I know it would help others. And finally, it got to the point in June where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to launch a podcast. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just kind of figured out how to do that. And, now I've been consistent. We've published 2 episodes a week, every single week since June of 2016. And it's just a platform for me to reach more people. I'm so blessed that through technology and the internet, we get to do this podcast, and yet hundreds, if not thousands of people get to watch it and listen to it, which is pretty amazing to me.
Let's go with the thousands. Let's not stick with hundreds.
Joey, did you know how similar we work? He talks about sharing wins and losses. It's like I share my wins and I share your losses on the show all the time.
That was unnecessary, Russ.
I love that.
No, I was actually resonating with the fact that you had a message to get out and you had no idea how to get started, but you just failed forward. And that's exactly what happened with our podcast. We knew that our clients needed to hear the conversations that we were having with each one. And we said, oh, well, let's just record them And every week we have a weekly conversation with our clients. And lo and behold, there's a lot more people like our clients across the country that happen to be listening, and we had no idea.
Well, the so what to that is, if you're listening to this and you have a business with clients, you probably ought to look into creating a podcast so you can share that conversation with many more people, like Alex is doing with us right now. So let's go back in, because as an entrepreneur, we do have many forks, and you said, you're in Guatemala and you're having this conversation with now your business partner, Steve, and you're really trying to say, hey, maybe there's something else. Maybe there's this new adventure you and I can go on and not only feel personally fulfilled in it, but also help others. And you call that Ascend. Talk a little bit about what Ascend is.
Yeah, no, again, I appreciate the opportunity to share it, because it's something we're truly passionate about. And I know we're creating an impact in people's lives. Ascend is one of the things I've gotten so much, guys, out of coaching. I've always had a coach, probably going back to 2007. And I've been a part of a number of masterminds. One of the things that I always felt was kind of missing is that I had to go seek the right coach, or I was working with a coach and I had to go seek the right mastermind. And Steve and I wanted to do something that we hadn't really seen done before, is put it all under one roof, right? Where you get the benefits of collaborating, masterminding, networking with other high-level entrepreneurs that are willing to be open and share their challenges, because again, we all have them, while at the same time coaching the right people. We set out to create a pretty small, intimate group of 30 entrepreneurs, 2 groups where we get together 3 times a year in South Florida, where we mastermind in person. And then we also get together every month on Zoom as a group, in addition to one-on-one monthly coaching calls. And we always start, I was sharing this with you guys before we started recording, start with the foundation. And to us, the foundation is getting clarity. What's the vision that you have for your life? What kind of life do you want to live, without regard to money or possessions or anything like that? If you could wake up and do anything, what would that be? What would your life look like? And so we start there. And as we take them through a process to gain clarity on a written vision, now we look at their existing business and say, okay, well, what do we have to tweak? What do we have to adjust? How do we modify or pivot so that your business can amplify the kind of life you want to live? So it helps you achieve your desired lifestyle and you living your vision, versus, for example, trying to scale and do more deals just because, but that's taking you further away from your vision. So yeah, Ascend is honestly, it's a community of like-minded, successful entrepreneurs that are there to help each other. And it's been phenomenal. So Steve and I lead the group, but they deserve all the success. They're doing the heavy lifting. We're just guiding them and helping them.
Let's talk about a couple of different examples of entrepreneurs that you've seen through this process. And I want to speak specifically to the clarity piece, like maybe an example, or like how have you seen that process be very difficult for somebody or very easy for somebody in terms of gaining clarity? Like, do you find that is a challenge for people to find, or what's your experience been?
Yeah, no, my experience, by and large, it hasn't been a challenge, because we have a very specific process that we take them through. What's that saying? Like, if the student's ready, the teacher will appear, And so the first thing is, are they just talking about wanting it, or do they really want it? Right. And so if I find that if people really want it and it's genuine, they're willing to put in the time and the effort. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, we live in a microwave society where I think people just want instant gratification, and we set the right expectations, that if you want to lose weight or gain muscle, you got to get in the gym and you got to put the right foods in your mouth. It just doesn't happen with one workout or with one meal. Same thing applies, I think, in our lives and in our business. And I heard this years ago, and I think it's so true, is more people spend time, planning a vacation than they do planning their life. And so we kind of flip that equation on its head. And so I have found that because of the interview process that we take people through, and it's not just about accepting people that can make the investment, but do they meet our core values? Do they really want it? Where are they in the business? We're looking to work with a particular type of person. I find that it hasn't been challenging, and we hold them accountable. Accountability is a big part of what we do.
So you said there, like the kind of people that this works for, and regardless if you're looking for a life coach or a mastermind to be a part of, obviously Ascend seems like an amazing one that you might want to be into. But I think what you're hearing from Alex, and you've seen this in his life, and I know you've probably heard Joey and I talk about this, that being involved in these networks and going to events, the connections that you build, the information that you gather, and some of the habits that you're able to employ are what makes us who we are. So I would love, though, you to kind of break out when you say this is who we want, but let's talk about who, not necessarily who Ascend doesn't want, but who does this typically not work for, right? Because that we always are thinking, well, what if I'm not the right fit for something? Like where does this life coaching and business coaching and consulting, where does the rubber hit the road for somebody to go, no, that's not for me?
Yeah. So I think the best way for me to answer that question, Russ, is to share our core values. Because if they don't check off those 4 boxes, it's an immediate, like, it's just not a good fit on either end. And that's not a bad thing. It is what it is. Right. So integrity is a very common core value. I almost want to kind of assume that's a given. I feel like every company's core value is integrity, but it's obvious why that's so important. Number 2, we talk about transparency. I think we have a lot in common, the 3 of us, as far as, sharing the losses, although Russ likes to share Joey's losses, right? But we want to work with people that are just going to be very real and authentic about what's holding them back. Because if you're going to make an investment in yourself and you're going to be part of a mastermind, but be guarded or not really share the challenges, you're not really going to grow, right? And so being authentic, being vulnerable is our second core value. Number 3, we need people that value personal development. Personal development, it's something I'm committed to. And I'm hungry to grow as a person. I'm not necessarily hungrier to make more money or hungry to grow the biggest business. I'm just hungrier for growth. And we want people that have a similar mindset, that value personal development. And then last, Steve and I, we want to have a massive impact on this world. And one of the ways that we felt we could do that was by working and pouring into people that also had a desire to impact others in a positive way. And so we feel like if we can work with people that also have that desire, it's kind of a multiplier effect. And so we want to work with people that it's not just about them, selfishly want to impact other people as well. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I love that hunger for growth. That is like, we all need to be striving to reach a level that maybe even we're not capable of understanding, that's in our DNA, and we can, and other people see more in us. I mean, that's the reason Joey's next to me. Like I saw more in him than he could have seen in himself as a mortgage officer. And then the next thing you know, he's like dragging me, like I'm like following his coattails because this guy has ascended way past my capability. Thankfully,
was the more in him the fact that I have a few more pounds in you, or I mean, was that a jab?
No, I why did you have to bring up the weight? I wasn't bringing up.
I wasn't gonna say anything either, guys. So that's on you.
That's not one of the losses I guess we've been covering lately.
Yeah, I'm not gonna care.
All right, so I do want to kind of, as we end this, as entrepreneurs, we do need insight into what others are dealing with, because sometimes we find value in knowing that someone else is similar to us and they've been there and done that, and we go, okay. So talk one last session that you've been in, maybe an example of somebody that has come through your program lately where you've seen them go through this process of being vulnerable, being willing to accept the challenge of sharing their need for help, and then what that actually translated to. How did you see them ascend past where maybe they thought was possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's countless examples that I can share. In the interest of time, I'll share with you one of the very first ones. This was about a year or so ago, and I know he'd be fine me mentioning his name. A gentleman by the name of Alex Jandik. He was working as an acquisitions manager for another successful wholesaler in a particular market. And I remember he joined Ascend, and this kid was a rising star. I mean, we saw him, although he wasn't an entrepreneur and didn't have his own business, this guy was well on his way, and he's proven us right. So it's kind of a rare example I'm choosing, but hopefully it kind of highlights what happens with the right coaching, the right mindset. So we had a coaching call, and he kind of opened up about the fact that, like, similar to me, he just wasn't happy working for somebody else. He knew the business, he knew the X's and O's. He was, he's married. He was going to have a baby, and he felt like now was a pivotal time for him to go off and do this on his own. But fear was holding him back. What if he failed? What if he couldn't make it work? What if, right? And the fear monster just gets bigger and bigger in our head. We had a coaching call, and he experienced a breakthrough on that call. And I kind of I asked him a lot of questions. I took him through a certain process. And I will never, as a coach, Steve will tell you the same thing. We will never tell people what to do. That's not my job. My job is to make sure you're progressing forward, ask the right questions, and essentially get out of you what's already in you, if that makes sense. And Absolutely. So he decided to quit his job and start the business. Since then, it's been about a year, maybe 11, 12, 13 months. He's probably closed. I don't have the exact number, but I want to say it's somewhere north of $300,000 in profit.
Wow.
In a year, his first year. And so now the guy can't be stopped. Now he's one of the top wholesalers in his market. The guy's absolutely crushing it. He's now hired an assistant, and he's growing. And so that's just a small example of, he could have easily let fear hold him back, and he still would have been working for someone else making 40 to 60, 40 to 70 grand a year, I think is what he was making as an acquisitions person for this other wholesaler. Now he's more than 5x that, 4x that, working for himself. And it's because he made a decision to invest in himself, get around the right community, people that are going to uplift him when things got challenging. And so that's just one tiny example. I could share other examples on the personal side of people struggling in their marriage, obviously without sharing any specifics, and how, at our last retreat, we had a couple of gentlemen who were struggling in their marriage. And so it was recommended to them to read the book, The Love Dare, and go on the 40-day Love Dare challenge. Now we hold each other accountable. We created a WhatsApp group, and every single day, all the men in Ascend are taking the Love Dare. And so we're strengthening our relationship with our wives, with our significant others. And it's because of this openness, this vulnerability that we encourage, that people will walk alongside you. The right people will walk alongside you and pour into your life, not just your life, but also your business.
Dude, I love all that you're talking about. If you get one-sided on either side of that, it's not success. It's like a flat tire, right? And you're not going to get anywhere with a flat tire, or not very far. Man, Alex, I can't thank you enough for being willing to come on the show today and sharing so many nuggets with us, inspiring us with your story and with the story of those that you get to lead and serve with Ascend. For those that want to connect with you, I know you're in our community, so people can definitely connect with you there. But outside of that, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so flipempire.com is my site. You can connect with me there. I'm on social media. And also the podcast, the Flip Empire Show, which you can find flipempire.com/podcast. That'll direct you right to Apple Podcasts. And, that's a show that I pour my heart into. I publish 2 episodes a week. And then obviously through ascendyoursuccess.com would be another way to get in contact with us.
That's awesome, man. Thanks again for being a part of what we're doing here, Wealth Without Wall Street, and much success to you in the future. And for those who are listening, we are so grateful for you being on today, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.